Built in southern Gaza with funding from Qatar, Hamad City was meant to be a beacon of modern housing, with updated and well-maintained apartment towers, clean roads, and commercial development for its residents. But in early 2024, Israeli intelligence uncovered the truth. Hamas had militarized the entire city. Beneath the buildings were reinforced tunnels, weapons caches, command posts, and housing for terrorist fighters. Entire floors of buildings were cleared out and converted into safe havens for Hamas commanders, with civilians unknowingly or sometimes knowingly living right above them as human shields. Hamas believed they had built an impenetrable stronghold inside Hamad City, but they were wrong. On March 3rd, 2024, the city was asleep. The air was still. From a distance, Hamad City looked like just another dark cluster of apartment towers along Gaza's southern edge. But just beyond the skyline, Israeli armor was rolling. Dozens of Namur APCs and Merkava tanks pushed forward. Behind them were convoys of Special Operations Forces ready to breach one of the most fortified urban zones in Gaza. This wasn't a fast entry raid, this was a methodical, layered infiltration, a full-spectrum assault on a city Hamas thought was untouchable. The 89th Commando Brigade led the charge, backed by the Javadi Infantry Brigade and armored elements. Their mission was to form a steel curtain around Hamad City. To the east and west, tanks created blocking positions to prevent Hamas reinforcements. To the north, infantry units took rooftop positions overlooking the city's entry points. To the south, demolition teams cut off tunnel escape routes from the city with targeted explosives. Meanwhile, IDF engineers deployed combat bulldozers to clear barricades and suspected IEDs laid by Hamas just hours earlier. It was a massive operation of synchronized motion, air, armor, infantry, and intelligence moving all in unison. As the units maintaining the perimeter around the city got into their positions, the Special Forces team began their approach. Shayet 13 operators moved in on foot, hugging alleyways, breaching low-rise structures, and positioning themselves to clear taller apartment towers. Recon teams used drone feeds to confirm heat signatures and movement inside key buildings. Embedded with the Special Operations teams were combat engineers specializing in tunnel warfare to help identify subterranean threats on entry. The Special Operations team had managed to breach the city without any incident, but as they approached their first building to clear, codenamed Tower 8, they were engaged by a small arms ambush. Gunfire coming from a third-floor window and a nearby tunnel opening ripped through the team. The team quickly took cover behind a concrete barricade and returned suppressive fire and called in a precision drone strike on the window. The drone fired a loitering munition, a Spike Firefly micro missile, and within seconds, the ambush was neutralized. But this surprise ambush confirmed their worst fears. Hamas knew they were coming, and they had barricaded themselves in the buildings, ready for a fight. So rather than entering through doors or staircases, which were now likely booby-trapped, operators used precision firepower to create new entry points. Merkava tanks fired HE rounds to blast breaching points through concrete walls on lower levels, allowing the operators on the ground to completely bypass any ambush points or booby traps Hamas may have set on entry points by creating their own entrance and entering in from behind the enemy. This tactic proved to be incredibly successful. And building by building, the operators took the barricaded Hamas fighters by surprise and made quick work of them. But as they were entering into the third apartment building on the first floor underneath a child's bed, they found a concealed hatch. It led to a tunnel shaft descending 20 feet into a reinforced corridor equipped with electrical lights, oxygen lines, and escape routes. The operators dropped flashbangs in the hole and used tunnel robots equipped with IR cameras to explore the path before entry. The tunnel proved to be much larger than they anticipated, confirming what earlier intelligence had suggested, that Hamad City wasn't just a command post, it was a subterranean fortress. The combat engineers continued working on the tunnel situation while the operators finished clearing the rest of the apartment. Fortunately, there were no more Hamas fighters inside the apartment, and they quickly wrapped things up and made their way back outside, heading towards the next building. But as the team approached the next apartment complex near the central mosque, a Hamas sniper positioned in an adjacent building fired a high-caliber round through a breach hole, striking an IDF sergeant in the chest.
Bismillah.
The operators quickly grabbed their wounded sergeant and dragged him behind cover. And despite the team providing immediate medical attention, the sergeant was declared KIA just minutes later. His name was later released publicly: Sergeant First Class Nadav Meir, age 23. He was the first Israeli casualty in the Hamad City operation, but he would not be the last. By nightfall on March 3rd, the IDF had successfully surrounded the entire neighborhood, cleared the first 6 buildings, detected and marked 3 tunnel shafts, and confirmed armed resistance in at least 14 additional buildings. The infiltration phase was now complete, but the city had not yet been taken. Now came the hard part: clearing it floor by floor, with the enemy waiting around every corner. By the morning of March 4th, the Israeli perimeter around Hamad City was sealed tight. Now came the next phase: the internal fight, room by room, floor by floor. Each building in Hamad City was constructed with thick concrete walls, multiple apartments per floor, and interconnected rooftop access, and Hamas had rigged many of them into vertical death traps. Interior doors were often wired with explosives, furniture was stacked to form barricades, tripwires were strung at knee height across hallways, and fighter positions were concealed behind false walls and mirrored panels. In one apartment, Shayet 13 operators kicked open a door and were immediately met with a burst of AK-47 fire through a wardrobe. Behind it was a Hamas fighter using a tunnel access point punched straight through the floor. They returned fire, breached the rear wall using a shaped charge, and cleared the room with grenades and close quarters rifles. On the 4th day of the operation, Shayet operators were clearing Tower 14, a mid-rise structure believed to be empty. As they reached the 3rd floor, the lead scout stepped into what looked like a vacant hallway. Suddenly, the entire floor collapsed. Hamas fighters had demolished the support beam, triggering a partial building cave-in. 3 Israeli soldiers fell 1 floor down. 1 was critically injured and pinned under debris. To make matters worse, Hamas fighters then suddenly opened fire on them from 2 separate concealed positions. The remaining operators quickly called in armored support, and tanks arrived on the scene. While still under fire, a demolitions team managed to slap breaching charges on an adjacent wall, blowing a big enough hole in the wall to extract the wounded while under fire. And miraculously, the wounded soldier survived. This wasn't your average booby trap, this was a meticulously engineered ambush. And while the fighting continued to rage on above ground, a second battle was happening below it. Combat engineers embedded with the special operations teams were tasked with detecting and clearing the vast network of Hamas tunnels laid beneath Hamad City. In one apartment complex, a tunnel shaft was found in a kitchen pantry beneath a tiled floor. In another, operators located a tunnel entrance behind a children's bookshelf leading to a concrete drop shaft with oxygen lines. Some tunnels had metal doors and blast-proof hatches, reinforced with steel bars and disguised from thermal drones. To deal with the threat, IDF forces deployed boomerang tunnel drones, remote-controlled wheeled bots equipped with night vision, thermal sensors, and small detonation charges. In one case, a boomerang drone entered a shaft and spotted 3 armed fighters moving through a tunnel with flashlights. Rather than engaging them directly, IDF command authorized a fuel-air explosive to collapse the entire tunnel, trapping the fighters inside. And this happened a lot. Not every threat inside Hamad City could be cleared out with small arms. When the enemy proved to be too entrenched in their barricaded positions, the IDF brought in precision firepower. Tanks stationed outside the perimeter would fire HE rounds to collapse entire floors of apartment buildings. Air Force helicopters fired Spike NLOS missiles through apartment windows based on thermal signatures, and drones delivered loitering munitions to take care of rooftop snipers. As the battle for the city intensified, the IDF deployed PSYOP units with loudspeakers and text message warnings to instruct civilians to evacuate. A surprising amount complied, but some refused, either out of fear or loyalty to Hamas. In one tragic incident, a Shayet 13 squad entered an apartment where a mother and 3 children had stayed behind. As they attempted to evacuate them, a secondary IED detonated in the stairwell, wounding 2 operators and killing the Hamas fighter who had remotely triggered the device. By March 10th, after a full week of sustained urban combat, the IDF had secured nearly 60% of Hamad City. Dozens of buildings were cleared, 5 tunnel shafts were destroyed, and over 45 Hamas fighters were confirmed killed. And multiple command centers and weapons caches had been uncovered. The cost had been high, but the city was beginning to fall. The final phase was now in sight, dismantling Hamas's final strongholds and extracting every ounce of intel buried beneath the rubble. This operation had come at a great cost. 3 IDF soldiers were killed, including 1 officer who stepped on a pressure plate IED while trying to rescue a wounded teammate. Dozens of operators were injured by shrapnel, small arms fire, and collapsing structures. Israeli medics operated under fire, evacuating wounded soldiers using armored APCs and smoke grenades. But on the other side, over 70 Hamas fighters were confirmed killed by the end. Many were found with grenades still clipped to their vests, indicating they intended to fight to the death. Roughly 300 individuals were detained, some suspected of direct involvement in planning attacks, and others for intelligence gathering. But one of the most important outcomes of the incursion wasn't the number of fighters killed, it was the intel recovered. Inside the city, IDF forces found USB drives with plans for future attacks, maps of tunnel networks connected to other parts of Gaza, surveillance data showing movement of hostages and arms, and proof of foreign advisors assisting Hamas operatives. They also uncovered tunnels that led back towards Rafah, revealing a much broader network of tunnels than they previously believed to be there. Every ounce of intel gathered helped shape the next stage of the war. And on March 16th, the IDF began withdrawing from Hamad City. The area was no longer a Hamas stronghold. The tunnels were collapsed, the buildings either cleared or leveled, and the enemy's leadership had fled or died. But the scars remained. Entire blocks had been turned to rubble, and the operators who entered, some never came back. The Hamad City incursion was not just another raid, it was a symbol of the brutal reality of modern urban warfare. Fighters hiding behind civilians, tunnels under schools, apartments converted into fortresses, and elite operators risking everything not just for tactical gains but to change the course of the war. They didn't just fight in Hamad, they erased a terror state hidden beneath a city.